knew I was going to go one of two ways. I either feel too nice to be really mean about these books, in which case it's going to be very short, or it's going to be very, very ranty. I'm going to go off on a lot of tangents, and we're going to be talking about these books for far longer than they deserve. In which case, I'm sorry, I think. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel, and let's talk least favorite books of 2020. I think least favorite books can be a bit more subjective about how you approach the topic than favorite books, because a lot of people talk about their favorite books of the year. That's pretty clear. But then some people talk about least favorite or worst or disappointing, and to me, those are three very different things. Disappointing could be not necessarily bad books, but books that let you down either because of your expectations for them or because something while you were reading them just really disappointed you. And then worst books I see more as objectively bad books, regardless of your reading experience. You could have enjoyed reading them, but objectively they were pretty bad books. I'm going for least favorite, which in my view is the books that I just didn't like. And maybe some of them are good books. Maybe some of them are bad books. Maybe some of them disappointed me. What unifies them is that they're just the books that I liked the least this year. So that's how I'm approaching this. This is probably way more introduction than you needed, but I thought it would help to clarify my choices a bit when I put it that way, because there's definitely books I read that I gave 4 stars but disappointed me, so I didn't want to include those. I need to stop talking about this. On the whole, I actually had a really good reading year. I liked a lot of what I read, so I've chosen to only include 5 books in this list. 5 felt like a good choice because if I included any more, it started to feel like I was including books that didn't really deserve to be in a least favorites list and we're just going in order to fill it out. In case you're curious, the way the books made it onto this list is that when I was looking at my lowest rated books for the year, I picked out the ones where I looked at it and went, I should have DNF'd that after 50 pages. Why did I finish reading this book? I shouldn't have. I guess the ultimate goal for my reading is that I DNF books at the right point so that I don't have a least favorites list where I go, every book that I read was at least okay and anything that was bad I didn't finish. The first book that I just really should have not finished in 2020 was The Other Side of the Coin, The Queen, the Dresser, and the Wardrobe by Angela Kelly. This is like a memoir type book by the woman who's worked as the queen's dresser. So I think she like picks out her outfits and helps her get dressed, and then also takes care of all the logistics around her clothing and the purchasing of clothing and planning what clothing's going to come on trips with them and what the queen is going to wear. It sounded really interesting. I was definitely interested in it though from a fashion choices and logistics point of view, not so much this random woman who happens to have this job's memoir point of view. And unfortunately it was a bit memoir heavy for me. Also, I just felt like this book would have benefited from a ghostwriter or more thorough editing. Maybe it just wasn't to my taste, but I just did not enjoy the writing style in this, and I think this could have been a much more interesting book if it was written a bit differently and in my view a bit better. Yeah, I'm finding it hard to talk about these things because I'm like, well, but that it was bad, or is it that I didn't like it? Anyway, in either case, I didn't like the writing in this, and it just wasn't very good. Next up, we have The Visitors by Catherine Burns. I read this and did a vlog and review at Halloween, so you can check that out if you want. Essentially, I wanted to try out a horror/thriller novel because I'd never really read one. I already owned this, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna start with this, even if I've never heard of it before, because I have it, so I'm gonna read it, get off my TBR. And unfortunately, it was neither horrifying, nor thrilling, nor even remotely mysterious. Some really horrible things happen in this book, but they were horrible things that I anticipated happening from the blurb, and there was really nothing substantial in the text of the book itself that surprised me based on what it said on the back of the book. So that was just really disappointing. I had really hoped that a horror/thriller book was going to horrify and thrill and elicit emotional reactions in me, and just nothing. Next up, I have a recent read that is Hiddensee, A Tale of the Once and Future Nutcracker by Gregory Maguire. Again, I actually did a video about this book as well, which I will link up above. It just didn't work for me, basically. I was hoping that the Nutcracker and the fairy tale of the Nutcracker would be pretty heavily involved in this book, which it wasn't. And on top of that, the protagonist/main character, who we spend the entire book following and being very zoomed in on, was more like a cardboard cutout than a person, and that's just not compelling or interesting to read about. I'm open to different kinds of characters. I don't need every kind of character to be exactly the same to find them interesting. But this character just had nothing going on. This was unfortunately a major dud for me. Next up, we have a bit of a throwback to a book I read fairly early in the year, and that is What We Talk About When We Talk About Books by Leah. From the blurb, I thought that this was going to be about how we're not currently going through the death of reading and the golden age of reading that everyone talks about in the past, where we all read books all the time and weren't on our darn smartphones. That never actually existed. Unfortunately, the book was just really disorganized feeling. Even though it theoretically had this central message and this central theme that it was arguing and driving forward, it just didn't feel like the various sections were connected to each other. But I don't think it was supposed to be a book of essays where everything is sort of disconnected. I don't know, I was just very confused. On top of that, the writing was what I can only call pretentious academic. This, however, felt like it was written in a way to be deliberately obscure, and like if the author used enough long words and complicated words and specific words that most people don't know, it's gonna make her look so much smarter and make it seem like so much more like, oh man, this is so insightful and she's so smart to have thought of this. Where once you actually read it and sort of thought about like, okay, well, how would you communicate that in normal nonfiction writing language? It's like, this isn't that great. Using big words and fancy words and stuff doesn't make your writing more worthwhile. And in my view, at the end of the day, the author doesn't seem smarter for having used those words. They just seem like they're afraid to make their work accessible to people. It really was not an enjoyable read, and I did not think highly of this book at all. The last book I want to mention is Central Station by Lavie Tidhar, and I'm starting to feel like there must be a curse for books that I read because I want to make a video about them, because I also made a video about this one, which you can check out, and I also really did not like this book. Basically, I think this was a little bit of editing and thought away from being a very interesting short story collection, but instead it was a novel that didn't actually read like a novel. Unfortunately, it wound up being a confusing novel that tried to do too much in too short of a span and didn't really execute any of it well as a result. Instead of just exploring this interesting, fascinating, complex world, I felt like I was supposed to be finding a plot or supposed to be following something that was happening, and things were linked together just enough to make you think that something was going to come of it, and then it didn't, and yeah, this was just not very enjoyable. Unfortunate, because I totally see the potential there. I totally see how this could be amazing and how his writing can be really good. This book just was not it for me. Based on the fact that I filmed for barely 10 minutes, I think this is going to be a short video, but I think that's okay, because we don't need too much negativity in our lives, do we? We're going into 2021 with a positive focus. It's gonna be great. If you would like to vent off some of your negativity, please let me know down below what were some of your least favorite reads for 2020. And as always, if you liked this video, please hit the like button. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.